The sound came first, a ragged, unsynchronized cough that tore through the damp Norfolk sky. It was not the confident, chest-thumping roar of 4 healthy Wright Cyclone engines. It was the sound of something mortally wounded. Master Sergeant Frank "Scrap" Hanna didn't even look up from the engine cowling he was wrestling. He could tell by the pitch. One engine was out. Another was running lean, popping and spitting. "Here comes another one for the boneyard," he muttered, his knuckles white as he forced a frozen bolt to turn. The air smelled of high-octane fuel, wet mud, and the metallic tang of fear. "Meat wagon, south perimeter," a voice yelled from the control tower. Hanna finally stood, wiping a black smear of grease from his brow with his forearm. He squinted against the flat gray light. She was a B-17G, Sloppy Joe's gal, back from Gotha. The gal was missing a significant portion of her vertical stabilizer, shredded by a 20mm cannon shell from an Me-109. Her portside outboard engine was feathered, its propeller a stark, unmoving X. The landing gear came down, but the portside wheel was visibly askew, drooping like a broken wing. "She ain't gonna make it," whispered a young private next to Hanna. "Shut up, kid. She'll make it." The Fortress hit the runway hard. A terrible metallic shriek tore the air as the damaged landing gear strut collapsed. The bomber slewed violently, digging its port wing into the mud, and spun in a sickening, grinding pivot before lurching to a stop not 50 yards from the main fuel dump. Silence. For a full 5 seconds, the airfield held its breath. Then, the hatches popped. The crew, boys of 19 and 20, spilled out, tumbling onto the grass. 2 were carried. The pilot, a captain who looked 40 but was probably 23, fell to his knees and vomited. Hanna and his ground crew were already moving, the crashed truck and ambulance roaring past them. He jogged toward the wreck, his eyes not on the shaken crew, but on the airframe. He walked under the sagging port wing, his practiced gaze taking in the damage. It wasn't just the crumpled wingtip or the dead engine. He sighted down the length of the main spar. The entire wing was twisted. The flak burst, and the hard landing had warped the primary load-bearing structure. The pilot staggered over, wiping his mouth. Can you fix her, Sarge?" Hanna kicked the hopelessly bent landing gear strut. He looked at the pilot, then at the twisted wing. He smelled the burnt oil, the scorched aluminum, and the damp earth shoveled by the propeller. "Son," Hanna said, his voice flat, devoid of hope, "this ain't a repair job. This is a rebuild. Your gal is going to the depot. You won't see her for 2 months." The pilot's face, already pale with shock, crumpled. 2 months? Sarge, my crew, we're due to rotate in 3 weeks. We finished our tour." Hanna looked at the devastated wing, a complex piece of engineering now bent like scrap. He looked at the kid. "You finished your tour, Captain. The gal hasn't. She's staying here. We don't have the tools. We don't have the time." He turned and walked away, leaving the pilot standing by the broken corpse of his aircraft. Hanna wasn't angry at the pilot. He was angry at the metal, at the mud, and at the unchangeable, brutal mathematics of the air war. They were losing, not in the sky, but on the ground. The year 1944 was a fulcrum. The American 8th Air Force, operating from a sprawling network of airfields in England, was tasked with a monumental objective: to break the back of the Third Reich by daylight. General Jimmy Doolittle, its new commander, had unleashed his fighters, allowing them to hunt the Luftwaffe to destruction. This combined bomber offensive was the linchpin of the entire Allied strategy. But it was a war of attrition, and the currency was aluminum and airmen. The problem was not just the aircraft lost over Germany. The greater, more insidious problem was the aircraft damaged. For every B-17 Flying Fortress or B-24 Liberator that fell from the sky, 5 more limped back to England, riddled with flak, savaged by cannon fire, their skins peeled back and their frames twisted. These planes were the walking wounded. They landed and were immediately triaged. A simple engine swap, 24 hours. A new sheet of aluminum skin riveted over a flak hole, 6 hours. But the true killer of operational readiness was structural warping. A bomber is not a truck. It is a precision instrument, designed to fly true at 25,000 feet. Its long, slender wings and fuselage are held in alignment to within 1/1000th of an inch. A flak burst, even one that didn't explode, could transmit a shock wave through the duralumin frame, knocking it out of true. A hard landing on a damaged wheel, like that of Sloppy Joe's gal, could send a catastrophic twist down the entire length of a 40-foot main spar. When this happened, the aircraft was useless. It would crab in the air, burning excess fuel, unstable, and a death trap for its crew. The official repair procedure, laid down in the Boeing and Consolidated Technical Manuals, was exacting. It was artisanal. A maintenance crew at a sub-depot, like the one Master Sergeant Frank Hanna ran, would have to build a complex wooden jig around the damaged section. They would use delicate surveyor's transits, plumb bobs, and lengths of taut piano wire to find the exact point of the warp. Then, they had to unbuild the airplane. Thousands of rivets had to be drilled out, one by one. The damaged spar or fuselage longeron, massive custom-milled beams of aluminum, had to be cut away. A new beam had to be ordered, shipped, and painstakingly fitted. Then, thousands of new rivets had to be driven. The average time for a major structural warp repair, 6 to 8 weeks. 6 weeks was an eternity. A crew flew 25 missions and went home. A plane grounded for 6 weeks meant that an entire crew, fresh from the States, had no aircraft. It meant the 8th Air Force, which needed to put 1,000 bombers over Germany every day to win, could barely muster 700. The sub-depots were overflowing. Airfields became boneyards. Vast parking lots of damaged bombers waiting for repairs that took too long. Hanna and his men worked 36-hour shifts, fueled by coffee and rage, only to see the line of broken birds grow longer every day. The war of logistics was being lost in a blizzard of aluminum shavings and rivet guns. Base Air Depot, Hangar 4, March 10, 1944, 2309. The air in Hangar 4 was thick with the acidic smell of metal solvent and the blue haze of welding smoke. 3 B-17s sat in various states of disassembly, their inner skeletons exposed under the harsh glare of portable spotlights. Hanna was arguing, again. "I'm telling you, Major, the manual is wrong." Hanna slammed a grease-stained technical order onto the plywood desk. "It says to ream the holes after the spar is set, but the new spar is settling. It's off by 1/16th of an inch at the wing root." Major Elias Thorne, the depot's engineering officer, rubbed his eyes. He was a good man, an engineer from Caltech, but he was drowning in paperwork. "Frank, the book is the book for a reason. Boeing designed it that way. Boeing designed it to be built new, in a factory, not to be patched up in a damp hangar in the middle of a war." Hanna pointed to the wing. "My crew just spent 400 man-hours riveting that spar in, and I'm telling you, it's not right. She's gonna fly crooked." "Then you'll take it out and do it again," a new voice cut in. Both men straightened. Colonel Wallace R. Hedges stood in the hangar door, his uniform immaculate, his face a mask of command. Hedges was a man who believed the war could be won by following procedure. "Sir," Hanna started, "we follow the book. This plane is out for another 3 weeks. We don't have 3 weeks. The crews don't have 3 weeks." "Master Sergeant," Hedges said, his voice dangerously quiet, "your job is not to innovate. Your job is to follow the specifications set forth by Army Air Force's Technical Command. We are not running a junkyard. We are returning precision instruments to service. If that wing is off by 1/16th of an inch, it is a danger to its crew. Do it again. By the book." Hedges turned and was gone. Hanna watched him go, his jaw working. He turned to Thorne. "He doesn't get it. He thinks this is a factory. He's a colonel, Frank. He sees the big picture. He sees a spreadsheet." Hanna shot back. "I see the planes. They're like broken bones. You don't fix a broken bone by replacing it. You set it. But we're just amputating." The desperation was palpable. The Big Week bombing campaign in late February had been a success, but it had cost the 8th Air Force 226 bombers. The depots were now critically overwhelmed. Morale on the ground was cratering. Hanna's men were exhausted, making mistakes. 2 days prior, a repaired B-24 had been test flown. Its fuselage alignment was off, and the stress had caused the tail assembly to flutter. The test pilot barely got it back on the ground. Another plane, another 5 weeks of work, all for nothing. Thorne sighed. looking at the spreadsheet Hedges had been holding. Operational readiness is down to 58%. We're failing, Frank. The brass is threatening to send in a new command team. Hannah picked up a bent aluminum rib from a scrap pile. He stared at it, his mind racing. We're not failing, Major. We're just stupid. There has to be a better way than drilling out 10,000 rivets. London, Southwark District, March 15, 1944, 10:30. Frank Hannah was not supposed to be in London. He was scrounging, a time-honored military tradition. He needed a specific set of bevel gears for a lathe, and the official supply chain was, as he put it, foobar. His unauthorized trip had taken him to a bombed-out industrial estate in Southwark, a graveyard of brick and twisted rebar. He smelled the workshop before he saw it, the unique, sharp scent of hot cutting oil and ozone. Tucked behind the ruin of a tannery was a small, miraculously intact brick building. The sign, hanging by one hinge, read, Finch & Sons, Precision Metalwork. Hannah pushed open the door. The inside was cramped but meticulously organized. Belts spun from a ceiling-mounted motor, driving lathes and presses. In the center of the shop stood a small, strange-looking man in a heavy wool coat, peering through thick spectacles at a large, grimy metal contraption. The man, Arthur Finch, didn't look up. If it's for the ministry, you're late. If it's scrap, I'm not selling. I'm looking for a gear cutter, Hannah said, his American accent filling the small space. Finch finally turned. He was perhaps 50, with a face like a sparrow, sharp, quick, and intelligent. American, Army. You're a long way from your base. I'm looking for a part, Hannah repeated. Everyone is, Finch said. He turned back to his machine. It was a large, steel-framed press, but unlike any Hannah had ever seen. It was bristling with hydraulic lines and delicate, clock-like gauges. In the press was a bent I-beam, clearly scavenged from a nearby ruin. What is that? Hannah asked, his curiosity overriding his mission. It's a nuisance, Finch said. They want me to help rebuild the local library. The steel is good, but the Luftwaffe, well, they're not very precise. Everything is bent. Finch pulled a long lever. A hydraulic pump hummed. Hannah watched, fascinated, as two massive steel arms on the machine pressed against the I-beam. But it wasn't a simple press. A third arm pulled from the opposite side, while smaller pistons pushed at the flanges. You're not just pressing it, Hannah said, walking closer. You're twisting it. Of course, Finch said, as if it were obvious. Metal has memory. You cannot simply force it straight. It will spring back. You must convince it. You apply stress here. He tapped a gauge. To normalize the tension here. You ease the molecular structure back into its original alignment. Brute force shatters. Precision persuades. A loud groan came from the I-beam. Finch worked the levers, his eyes darting between three different pressure gauges. The pump hummed, the pressure rose, then held. He let it sit for a moment, then slowly bled the pressure. He released the clamps. He took a long steel ruler and placed it against the beam. It was perfectly, impossibly straight. Hannah stood frozen. The smell of the hot oil, the hum of the pump, the sight of the warped steel being persuaded back to true. It all clicked into place. He saw the twisted wing of Sloppy Joe's gal. He saw the boneyard full of grounded fortresses. Mr. Finch, Hannah said, his voice barely a whisper. Can you build this bigger? Finch squinted at him. Bigger? What for? You're not rebuilding a library. Hannah grabbed Finch by the arm, his greasy fingers leaving dark smudges on the wool coat. He dragged him outside to his Jeep. Taped to the dashboard was a recognition photo of a B-17. Not a library, Mr. Finch, Hannah said, his heart pounding. I'm rebuilding these. Finch stared at the picture. He looked at the long, slender wing. He looked back at his press. A slow smile spread across his thin face. Oh, that's interesting. Yes, I'd need more steel, a lot more steel, and bigger pumps. From a destroyer, perhaps. Yes, I think I could. Base Air Depot, conference room, March 18th, 1944, 14. The conference room was cold. A single, weak bulb illuminated the blueprints Arthur Finch had sketched on butcher paper. They were spread across Colonel Hedges' mahogany desk. In attendance were Hedges, Major Thorne, Master Sergeant Hannah, and a visiting technical representative from the Boeing company, a civilian named Mr. Davies. Absolutely not, Davies said, not even bothering to sit. He tapped the blueprint with a contemptuous finger. This is preposterous. It's a hydraulic alignment jig, sir, Major Thorne said, stepping in. He had been convinced by Hannah and was now risking his career on this. Mr. Finch's design would allow us to bolt an entire damaged airframe, or wing section, into a static bed. I can see what it is, Major, Davies interrupted, his voice dripping with condescension. It's a giant sledgehammer. You're proposing to bend a B-17's primary wing spar back into alignment, like a common car frame. Metal has memory, sir, Hannah said, unable to stay quiet. Mr. Finch's system uses opposing hydraulic pressures to ease the stress. Sergeant, you are a mechanic. I am an aeronautical engineer. Davies snapped. You apply that kind of multi-ton force to a duralumin spar, you will create microfractures. You will crystallize the metal. The first time that pilot hits turbulence at 20,000 feet, his wing will shear off. You're not fixing planes, you're building coffins. Colonel Hedges, who had been silent, finally spoke. Mr. Davies, I am inclined to agree. This machine seems like a fantasy. Master Sergeant, I am already facing an inquiry over our depot's abysmal repair rates. I will not be court-martialed for approving a harebrained scheme that violates every technical order. The room fell silent. The ticking of the clock was deafening. Hannah looked at Thorne. Thorne looked at the blueprints. Finch, who had been invited at Thorne's insistence, simply looked at Mr. Davies as if he were a puzzle. You're wrong, Finch said quietly. All eyes turned to the small Londoner. Mr. Davies, Finch continued, his voice calm, you are correct that uncontrolled force would shatter the spar, but you are thinking of the metal as a single solid object. It is not. It is a structure under tension, a web of molecules. Your planes are damaged by uncontrolled force. I am proposing controlled persuasion. The gauges, they are the key. We will not exceed the metal's elastic limit. We will simply reset it. Davies scoffed. And you know this how? By straightening beams for a library? Hannah saw his opening. Sir, with all due respect, what do we have to lose? He pointed out the window at the boneyard, at the rows and rows of crippled bombers sitting in the mud. Those planes are scrap. Mr. Davies, your book says they need to be broken down and shipped back to the States. They are a total loss. Give me one of them. Give me the worst one you've got. Let us try. If we fail, you've lost one plane that was already lost. But if we succeed, Colonel Hedges looked at the boneyard. He looked at the desperation in Hannah's eyes and the quiet confidence in Finch's. He hated it. It was irregular. It was messy. But his career was sinking anyway. Major Thorne, Hedges said, his voice clipped. You are an engineering officer. Do you stake your commission on this? Thorne, the man from Caltech, looked at Finch, the man from the back alley shop. He swallowed. Yes, sir, I do. Hedges stood. Very well. You will be given Hangar 4. You will be given a budget of 0. Everything you use, you will scavenge. I want this depot's official work to continue unimpeded. This folly is entirely on you, Major. Do not make me regret this. As they walked out, Hannah clapped Thorne on the back. You did good, Major. Thorne loosened his tie. Frank, this had better work. Hangar 4, March 19th, April 5th, 1944. Hangar 4 became a world unto itself. Hedges, true to his word, had labeled it condemned and ordered all official work moved to other hangars, isolating Thorne's folly from the rest of the base. Hannah assembled his team, the misfits, mechanics who asked too many questions, welders who preferred improvisation, and riggers who had been reprimanded for unsafe but fast practices. They were the best he had. Arthur Finch moved into a small office in the hangar, sleeping on a cot. He was the architect, the priest of a new strange religion of pressure and steel. The machine, which the crew dubbed the Great Twister, was built from the bones of the war. We need a bed, Finch announced on the first day, his hands chalking a massive rectangle on the concrete floor. It must be perfectly flat and incapable of movement. Hannah and his men went scrounging in earnest. They returned days later with two 60-foot main I-beams, salvaged from a bombed-out shipyard in Portsmouth. They embedded them in the concrete floor using a surveyor's transit, stolen from a very confused Royal Engineers depot, to ensure they were level to within 1/100th of an inch. Next came the towers and the rams. "The pumps," Finch said. "I need pressure, at least 5,000 psi, and it must be variable." Hannah knew where to go. He requisitioned the entire hydraulic turret traversing system from a Royal Navy cruiser, the HMS Dauntless, which was in dry dock for a catastrophic torpedo wound. The pumps were massive, intricate, and perfect. They worked for 18 days straight. The sound of arc welders hissed and crackled 24 hours a day, the blue-white light throwing grotesque shadows across the hangar. The air grew thick with the smell of ozone, hot steel, and stale coffee. They wrestled the hydraulic pumps into place, masterpieces of brass and steel. Hannah's men ran hundreds of feet of high-pressure hydraulic line, their hands raw and bleeding from tightening the complex fittings. Setbacks were constant. A line burst, spraying a jet of hot, toxic oil across the hangar, narrowly missing a welder. Finch, unfazed, simply pointed. "That fitting is flawed. Replace it. We must use seamless steel, not copper." The most critical parts were the gauges. Finch was tyrannical about them. They needed to measure pressure not just in tons, but in minute increments, and also measure movement down to the 1,000th of an inch. Hannah's crew liberated micron-level dial indicators from a damaged Spitfire engine calibration stand. Finch himself built the control console. It was a steampunk marvel of levers, taps, and dials, all salvaged, all mismatched, but all connected. On the 19th day, it was finished. It was a monster. A 60-foot steel bed with movable towers bristling with hydraulic arms, clamps, and chains. It looked less like a tool and more like a medieval torture rack for a giant. "Right," Hannah said, wiping his hands on a rag. "Let's find a patient." Hangar 4, April 6, 1944, 09. Their first patient was the worst they could find. A B-17F that had been cannibalized for parts after a crash landing had snapped its fuselage in two, just aft of the radio room. It was a complete write-off, destined for the smelter. "If we can fix this," Hannah argued, "we can fix anything." It took them 6 hours just to move the twisted rear fuselage section onto the jig and clamp it down. The metal was horribly mangled, the longerons bent into S-curves. Colonel Hedges and Major Thorne stood on the gantry above, watching. Mr. Davies, the Boeing rep, had been invited by Thorne. He stood with his arms crossed, a smirk on his face, waiting for the demonstration to fail. "All clear," Hannah yelled. Finch stood at his console. He looked like a ship's captain at the helm. "Right, applying primary tension, 5 tons. The electric motor for the hydraulic pump hummed, rising in pitch. The steel lines went taut. The massive hydraulic arms pressed against the bent fuselage. Cree! The sound was horrifying. A high-pitched metallic scream of aluminum in agony. A shower of oxidized paint chips exploded from a pressure point. "Hold," Finch commanded. He let the pressure sit, his eyes scanning the gauges. "She's resisting. Good." "It's going to snap," Davies said loudly from the gantry. "Applying counter-pressure. Port side," Finch said, ignoring him. He engaged a second lever. A different set of arms, pulling this time, began to work. Scree, groan. "She's moving," Hannah breathed, his eyes on the dial indicators. 0.01, 0.02. Suddenly a sound like a rifle shot echoed through the hangar. Crack. A main longeron, the thickest structural beam, had split. Davies laughed. "Well, there you have it, Major. You've just destroyed a perfectly good piece of scrap. Congratulations." Hedges turned to Thorne, his face grim. "Shut this down." "Wait!" Finch yelled. His face was covered in sweat. "It's the skin. The skin is fighting the frame. The tension is wrong." He wasn't asking permission. He bled the pressure from all lines. "Sergeant Hannah, I need relief cuts, here and here." He pointed to sections of the aluminum skin. Hannah understood. The skin itself was acting as a stressed member, preventing the frame underneath from moving. He grabbed a power shear. "Do it!" His crew chief sliced 2-foot-long gashes in the fuselage skin. "Again," Finch commanded. He reapplied the pressure, this time more gradually. The pump hummed. The arms moved. The metal groaned. But this time, it was a low, resonant moan, not a scream. "It's working," Thorne whispered, gripping the gantry rail. They watched, mesmerized, for 10 minutes. Finch worked the console like a church organ, applying pressure, then easing it, pulling here, pushing there, letting the metal rest and normalize. Bang! 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 A series of rivets, their holes now hopelessly misaligned by the straightening, popped their heads and shot across the hangar. "Bleeding all pressure," Finch called. The arms retracted. The jig went silent. The crew descended on the fuselage, Hannah holding the long, precious piano wire for alignment testing. He and his crew chief strung it from the forward bulkhead to the tail gunner's station. It was supposed to pass directly through the center of 3 alignment holes. Hannah peered into the darkness. The wire was perfect. It passed through the dead center of all 3 holes. The frame was true. "Holy Mother," Hannah whispered. He looked up at the gantry. Davies' mouth was open. He was speechless. Hedges stared, unblinking, for a full 10 seconds. Then he looked at Major Thorne. "Major, get Sloppy Joe's gal in here. Now." Hangar 4, April 7th, 1944, 05 Sloppy Joe's gal, the B-17 from Chapter 1, was dragged into Hangar 4. Her port wing was a ruin, twisted by the bad landing. The main spar bent 11 degrees off true, a 6-week job. "We can't put the whole plane on," Finch analyzed, sipping his tea. "The jig is not for the whole aircraft. It is for the component." Hannah got his best cutters. In 2 hours they had done the impossible. They had removed the entire 50-foot wing at the root, a procedure the manual said was depot level only, and not to be attempted in the field. They lowered the massive wing onto the Great Twister. It took 4 hours to secure it. This was far more complex than a simple fuselage. "The alignment is delicate," Finch murmured, his hands dancing on the console. "We are not just straightening, we are removing a twist." For 8 hours, they worked. They applied pressure. They heated certain joints with torches to ease the stress, Hannah's idea. And they took constant x-rays, a borrowed medical unit, to check for the microfractures Mr. Davies had warned about. None appeared. By 18 on, the spar was true. Now came the real test of the system. It wasn't just about bending, it was about time. Before, Hannah's men would have drilled out thousands of rivets. Now, with the frame straight, they only had to replace the skin panels that had been shredded or had popped their rivets. The bone was healed. It just needed a new skin. Hannah's riveting crews, sensing history, descended. They worked in a furious, rhythmic chorus. Bap, 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 bap. Total time from Hangar 4 entry to rollout, 51 hours. Not 6 weeks, 51 hours. Raththorpe Abbots, the airfield, April 9th, 1944, 10. The original crew of Sloppy Joe's gal was assigned to their new aircraft. They eyed it with deep suspicion. "Sarge," the pilot, Captain Miller, said to Hannah, "this is the gal, but it can't be." "She's ready to fly, Captain," Hannah said, handing him the logbook. "But the wing, it's new," Miller said, running his hand over the fresh rivets. "She's straight," Hannah said. "That's all you need to know." The real trial wasn't the test flight. It was the mission. The gal was put at the head of the formation for a high-risk strike on an aircraft factory in Brunswick. Hannah, Thorne, and Finch stood by the radio shack in the control tower. They didn't speak for 6 hours. The air was thick with the smell of stale cigarettes and dread. Then, the reports came in. Formation crossing the Dutch coast. Flak is heavy. Very heavy. Hannah pictured that wing, his wing, Finch's wing, absorbing the shock waves. Bandits reported. Me-109s and Focke-Wulfs, engaging. Hannah closed his eyes. He pictured the pilot throwing the gal into a 40-degree bank to avoid a cannon pass. Would the microfractures appear? Would the wing shear off? Had they, as Davies warned, built a coffin? Another hour. Lead element reports. Gal has lost number 3 engine. Flak. Hannah's stomach clenched. She's holding formation, the radio operator added. Another hour. Then the sound. The ragged cough of returning bombers. They ran outside. Sloppy Joe's gal was the first one they saw. She came in low and fast, 3 engines pulling hard, the number 3 feathered. She touched down, a perfect gentle landing, and taxied to her hard stand. Hannah and Thorne were in their Jeep before the engines even cut. They pulled up as Captain Miller climbed down. He looked exhausted, but he was grinning. He walked straight to Hannah. "Sarge," Miller said, pulling off his helmet. "I've flown 24 missions in that bird. She has never flown that good. Not even when she was new. She's perfect. Whatever you did, do it to all of them." He pointed up at the wing. It was pockmarked with new flak holes, but it was rock solid. The repair had held. Hannah looked at Thorne, a slow, wide grin spreading across his grease-stained face. "Major, I think we're in business." 8th Air Force HQ, High Wycombe, April 20th, 1944. General Doolittle himself read the report. It was authored by Major Elias Thorne, titled Project Strongarm, a novel method for rapid airframe rectification. The numbers were stark. Subject, B-17G, Sloppy Joe's gal, damage, 11-degree warp, port main spar. Standard repair time, USAAF manual, 480 man-hours, Eastern 7 weeks. Project Strongarm repair time, 51 hours. Result, aircraft returned to full combat duty. A second memo was attached from Colonel Hedges. "Sir, I witnessed this process myself. It is, in my opinion, a strategic imperative. Master Sergeant Hannah and Major Thorne have, without authorization but with profound effect, solved our single greatest logistical bottleneck. I recommend immediate implementation across all base air depots." The dominoes fell fast. Hangar 4 went from Thorne's folly to the miracle hangar. Depot commanders from all over the 8th Air Force were flown in. They would arrive, arms crossed, skeptical, just as Davies had been. They would watch Hannah's crew and Finch's quiet, precise direction. They'd see a B-24 with a broken back get hauled onto the jig. They'd watch the groan of the metal, the dance of the gauges, and see it roll out 48 hours later. They left as true believers. Within a week, Finch jigs, as the troops called them, much to Finch's embarrassment, were being commissioned for every major repair depot in the United Kingdom. Arthur Finch was given an exceptional civilian service contract, a blank check for materials, and a team of Royal Engineers to help him fabricate. The effect on the air war was immediate and profound. The boneyards began to empty. Operational readiness for the 8th Air Force, which had dangerously hovered at 58%, shot up. By May, it was 75%. By June 1st, just days before the Normandy invasion, it was at an unheard-of 88%. The 8th Air Force could now guarantee 1,000 bomber raids, day after day, week after week. The war of logistics on the ground, the one Hannah had been losing, had been won. Recognition followed. Major Elias Thorne was promoted to Lieutenant Colonel. His career not just saved, but made. Master Sergeant Frank Hannah, an enlisted man, received a battlefield commission to warrant officer. He also received a very confused, but deeply respectful, letter from the Boeing company asking for his technical notes on duralumin stress normalization. But for Hannah, the real recognition came from the pilots. They started buzzing Hangar 4 after test flights, a thunderous, sky-shaking salute to the men on the ground who were finally able to keep up. The Finch jig was a masterpiece, but it was a prototype. The moment it hit the field, American ingenuity took over. Hannah's crews, now the most experienced in the ETO, became evangelists, training other depot teams, and they improvised. "The bed is too slow to load," Hannah complained to Finch. So his crews invented dollies. They built massive wheeled carriages that a damaged wing or fuselage could be bolted to outside the hangar. The whole assembly was then rolled onto the jig, clamped, and repaired. This cut the loading time from 6 hours to 1. They got fast. They developed preset recipes on the hydraulic console. A Regensburg twist, a common fuselage warp from flak over that city, had its own set of pressure coordinates. A Messerschmitt Special, a mangled tail from a 20mm attack, had another. They even found an offensive application. "This B-24, she's a pig," a pilot told Hannah. "Always pulls to the right. Engine torque." Hannah and Finch had an idea. They put the undamaged B-24 on the jig. They applied 0.5 degrees of intentional countertwist to the main fuselage, just enough to offset the engine torque. The pilot flew it the next day. He came back breathless. "She flies like she's on rails. It's the best plane in the squadron." Suddenly, Hangar 4 wasn't just a repair shop. It was a high-performance tuning garage. Pilots began requesting the Hanna tune-up. The enemy, meanwhile, was not blind. Luftwaffe intelligence report, fictionalized, May 19, 1944. Analysis of 8th Air Force tail number sightings is deeply troubling. Aircraft Sloppy Joe's GAL, tail 42-3100, confirmed catastrophic damage on 24 Feb, was resighted in a combat formation on 9 April. This is a logistical impossibility. Standard Allied repair for such damage is 6 to 8 weeks. This aircraft returned in 44 days. Sicht was 51 hours. Conclusion: the Americans have either opened a new, massive supply line of new aircraft we are unaware of, or they have developed a revolutionary repair technique. All sub-depot facilities are to be upgraded to priority targets. The Luftwaffe began targeting the repair depots, not just the airfields. The war of logistics had become a shooting war. After D-Day, as the Allies pushed into France, the problem became how to fix planes closer to the front. Hanna and Thorne's solution was pure American brute force. They built a mobile Finch jig on the flatbed of a massive Diamond T tank transporter. They could now drive their Miracle right up to a forward landing strip, fix a B-26 Marauder's bent wing, and have it flying again by nightfall. Base Air Depot, Hangar 4, July 1, 1944, 15:20. Success breeds arrogance. With the pressure on to keep the post-D-Day bomber streams at full strength, Hanna's crew was working faster than ever. They had become legends and they knew it. "This one's bad, Frank," a crew chief said, pointing to a B-24, the Vindicator, that had taken a direct flak hit to the wing root. "It's not just bent, it's pulverized." "Put it on the jig," Hanna said, not even looking up from his coffee. "We fixed worse." "I don't know, boss. The metal looks crystallized already." "The jig will find it. Put it on." They bolted the wing down. Arthur Finch, who was now overseeing jig construction at 3 other bases, was not present. Hanna's senior crew chief, a man named Diaz, was at the console. Diaz applied the pressure. 10 tons, 20 tons. "She's not moving, Frank." "Give her the juice," Hanna ordered. 35 tons. Diaz grimaced and pushed the lever. The sound was not a groan. It was a snap, a sharp, crystalline crack that was horrifyingly final. The entire wing spar, a beam of duralumin 2 feet thick, split in half. The crew was silent. They had just destroyed the wing. "Get it off the jig," Hanna said, his voice cold. "Scrap it." But they were in a hurry. They didn't scrap it. They patched it. They used the old method, riveting a scab plate over the crack, a solution that was supposed to be temporary. They signed it off, the pressure from Hedges to make the numbers overriding their good sense. Over the North Sea, July 4, 1944, 11:03. The Vindicator was 30 minutes into its mission when it hit severe turbulence. The pilot, a second lieutenant named Markovich, felt a lurch. The radio operator, looking out the waist window, screamed, "The wing! Sir, the wing is—" The scabbed spar, compromised by the jig's pressure and the flak damage, gave way. The starboard wing folded up like a bird's, and the Vindicator entered an unrecoverable spin. 10 men were lost. The inquiry was brutal. Hanna, Thorne, and Hedges stood before a panel of generals. "You knew the jig had cracked the spar," one general accused. "We pushed it too far," Hanna said, his voice hollow. He felt the weight of the 10 men. "It was my fault. I got cocky." The Finch jig program was in jeopardy of being shut down. It was Arthur Finch who saved it. He arrived on the 3rd day of the inquiry, carrying a box of metal fragments. "Gentlemen," he said, "I have analyzed the spar from the Vindicator. Warrant Officer Hanna is wrong. The jig did not break this wing." He laid the fragments on the table. "This metal," he pointed to the crystalline grain, "was already dead. The flak hit. It was a cold hit. It didn't explode. It impacted. It shattered the molecular structure. The jig only revealed the damage. The failure was not in the jig. It was in the diagnosis." He proposed a new step: magnaflux and X-ray inspection of all major warps before they were put on the jig. If microfractures were already present, the component was to be scrapped. No exceptions. The program was saved. But Hanna was changed. The miracle man was now a somber, careful veteran. He had created a machine to save crews, and his own arrogance had used it to kill one. It was a lesson in the moral consequences of power, a lesson he would never forget. The Hanna tune-up was over. From now on, it was just the book. But it was a new book, one he and Finch were writing. Spring 1945. The sky over Germany belonged to the Allies. The great 1,000-bomber raids that the Finch jig had made possible had pulverized the Third Reich's capacity to make war. The oil refineries at Ploesti were dust. The ball-bearing factories at Schweinfurt were silent. The Luftwaffe, starved of fuel, parts, and pilots, could no longer mount an effective defense. The ugly, brutal machine in Hangar 4 and its dozen copies had fundamentally altered the strategic balance. In a post-war analysis, USAF statisticians would credit the Type 3 airframe rectifier, its bland official designation, with an astonishing feat. It had by itself increased the operational readiness of the entire 8th and 9th Air Forces by a sustained 30–35%. This number was not abstract. It translated to hundreds more bombers in the air, every single week, for the most critical 12-month period of the war. It meant the bombing campaign reached its tipping point in late 1944, rather than mid-1945. Historians would argue that this logistical miracle, born in a bombed-out London shop, shortened the war in Europe by months, saving tens of thousands of Allied lives. The war in Europe ended on May 8, 1945. In a quiet ceremony in the now famous Hangar 4, surrounded by mechanics and flight crews, Lieutenant Colonel Elias Thorne was awarded the Legion of Merit for engineering excellence and strategic innovation. Warrant Officer Frank "Scrap" Hanna received the Bronze Star. His citation read, "For meritorious service in developing new methods of aircraft repair, directly contributing to the success of the combined bomber offensive." Arthur Finch, a civilian, could not be given a military medal. Instead, the American ambassador presented him with the Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian award. The ambassador gave a speech about the special relationship and Yankee ingenuity. Finch, brushing grease from his new suit, just nodded. "The medal," he said to Hanna later over a warm beer. "It just needed to be understood." Colonel Hedges, now a brigadier general, quietly approved the requisitions to have 3 of the jigs shipped to the Pacific Theater, where they would do the same work for the B-29s, preparing for the invasion of Japan. Dayton, Ohio, 1983. Frank Hanna, now in his late 60s, walked through the vast hangars of the United States Air Force Museum. He ran a successful and very large automotive and industrial machinery repair business in Ohio. His shops were famous for fixing the unfixable. He walked past the sleek, terrifying lines of the new jet fighters, past the massive B-36 Peacemaker. He eventually found his way to the World War II gallery. There, gleaming under the lights, was a B-17G, painted to look like the Memphis Belle. He stood before it for a long time. His wife, waiting patiently, knew not to interrupt him when he got this look. He reached out and ran his hand along the leading edge of the wing, his fingers tracing the perfect flush line of rivets. He could almost smell the hot oil and the damp Norfolk air. He could hear the groan of the jig, the pop of the rivets, the roar of the cyclones. He thought of Captain Miller, of the Vindicator, and of the thousands of other boys who had flown home to his hangars. A young museum-goer, a boy of about 12, looked at the B-17 and then at the old man. "Did you fly in one of those, mister?" Frank Hanna smiled, a slow, sad smile. "No, son. I was just one of the guys on the ground. We just kept 'em flying." He turned and walked away. History has largely forgotten the Finch jig. It was never as famous as the P-51 Mustang, as decisive as the atomic bomb, or as groundbreaking as radar. It was an ugly, brutal, classified piece of hardware. Its story was buried in technical after-action reports and the private memories of the men who operated it. Lieutenant Colonel Elias Thorne retired from the Air Force as a Major General in 1968, having been a key figure in the Air Research and Development Command, where his understanding of airframe integrity was vital to the creation of the B-52 Stratofortress. Arthur Finch's London shop was rebuilt, anonymously, funded by a group of American investors. He held several patents for high-pressure hydraulic presses, and he died a quiet, comfortable, and respected man in 1972. The historical narrative, in a documentary voiceover, would conclude, "The air war was fought by pilots, but it was won by logistics. It was won by the anonymous, the greasy, and the ingenious." In the desperate calculus of 1944, victory didn't just belong to the brave men who flew into the flak. It belonged to the unlikely minds who found a way to heal the metal, to straighten the bone, and to send the bombers back into the sky, one more time.